the growth has been fun to deal with as a board member of trying to. We're just starting to really hire people, a developer to work on the web editor, and about to hire someone to work on the operations side of things. It was all volunteers until now. Heroes kept the servers working during the spare time for fun. And also managing the growth in contributions, which is sometimes straining the volunteer working groups. We have a data working group that works on helping out with disputes and resolving claims of vandalism or bad mapping. It's most of the time it's good faith but clumsy, and that's always been understaffed. But we're seeing more and more that we are getting more contribution and mappers than we are getting volunteers to join the working group. So that's a challenge. Challenge is always finding people to do the boring work of. I'm also the treasurer of the OpenStreetMap Foundation. So I joined because I was told there would be maps, and I'm ending up doing accounts and budgets.
Guillaume, I really like that you mentioned the boring work, because that is actually one of those key factors that we draw this sort of line between our staff, and we're lucky to have had staff for a number of years, and volunteers, because the volunteers don't want to do boring work, but the staff basically are sat down, grabbed by the nape of the neck, sat down, okay, now go do this thing that nobody else wants to do. The fun things the community will take care of. So I appreciate you pointing out that particular word.
We're kind of at the crossroads of how much do we want to stay a lean, fun, volunteer-driven organization, and how much do we want to professionalize, to use that word, which is in itself controversial in the community. And I think if we want to do some things, then we have to pay people to do it. And other things we want to very much keep in the hands of a volunteer community. The Wikimedia model gets kind of agitated as a scarecrow in the OpenStreetMap community of becoming a big organization that is maybe driven by itself and not as much driven by the individual contributors anymore. That's something people are afraid of.
And I think if I pick up on the sort of shared thread in terms of what we see, one of the challenges for Open Apparel Registry, we're fortunate. We do have a person who is dedicated to moderating data within our registry, but a massive driver behind making that hire was that, we have a deduplication algorithm that's performing to a really high level of accuracy, but what sticks in people's mind is the one duplicate that they find in a database of 70,000 facilities. And so if the trust in your data drops, then people will not come to you as the trusted source of data for a particular sector, in our case, the apparel sector. So we've had to think a lot about what's the messaging, how do we help people report duplicates in a way that means that they're providing a helpful service, but they don't hear talk of duplicates all the time, because a big value proposition for Open Apparel Registry is the deduplication algorithm. And so explaining a statistical algorithm to a non-technical audience to help them understand why it might not have caught a particular duplicate in the database. And then again, especially when you're working with stakeholders globally across, for whom English might not be their first language, that's definitely a challenge that we've seen. And then in turn, helping people understand how to use that data in their work. So it's all part of this package for us of entering into a sector with a technical solution to a data problem, but for a sector that might not be as technically as advanced as some others, with a lot of users that haven't had a lot of exposure to technology. So that's definitely something that we've had to overcome and continue to work on a lot in our kind of daily interactions with stakeholders, and thinking through how we build and grow our team in terms of what's necessary to maintain that level of trust in data.
So we had a question just now from the chat section asking if it can be turned into virtuous circle, what you're doing. And that was actually going to be my point, in that one of the challenges that I've always had was to identify these, well, I call them metadata feedback loops. And a metadata feedback loop could be a system where if we're starting to build some value out of our data, so in this particular case, there's enough data that people can actually start using a tagging program to tag their own music collection, and then maybe take 1,000 hours of effort out of the system and give us one back and say like, oh, you're missing this album, this is incorrect, this needs to be fixed, and then put that back into the system so the next person that comes along benefits from that, right? And as soon as you can build this metadata loop, this feedback loop, a virtuous cycle, that's when things start happening, because now you are actually providing value for people, and then more people, they will tell their friends like, oh, I fixed my music collection, right? And they will come in and bring more people in. So these virtuous cycles, I think, are absolutely really critical. And Amy, in the comments, thank you for mentioning that. I think it's really key for actually building these sorts of systems, because otherwise it's very easy to just languish on the sidelines and not ever be taken seriously if you have to continue to push the value and the value proposition of your data. But instead, if you can actually build it so that the people are coming and they're recognizing, oh, this is really cool, this is useful, this is solving a problem of mine, let me, in this state of excitement, let me give them some data, let me help out, and then the data pile gets larger, the community gets larger, and that draws more people in. So I think one of the critical things that every organization should be looking at is identifying these sorts of circles and how to actually foster them, build them, and constantly build new ones. I think it's a really, really critical thing to be doing.
Yes, definitely.
Sorry, you go ahead.
Oh, sorry, go for it.
I was going to ask Robert if quality is something that you are quite concerned about, like Katie, or if you are more like the OpenStreetMap community that will say that every geodatabase has bugs and warts and issues, but the OpenStreetMap community is the only one where you will get told exactly what the problems are. Like people in academia have made careers pointing out problems in OpenStreetMap. Yeah,
we very much care about quality, and we perhaps take a bit of a different tack on it from others. So if somebody says, hey, I found a mistake in your database, we won't run, go fix it. We'll just say, go create an account, right? And then go here, and then that's how we can fix it. Again, like that also builds these virtuous cycles as well.
Yeah.
And yeah, we care about quality. And there was a data comparison that was done over 10 years ago, and there was an Aphex Twin track. And the music track was actually generated by an equation. And all the other music services just had the word equation in parentheses for the name of the track. Somewhere, somebody in my community went and found all of the math symbols in Unicode and entered all of the symbols so that the equation was properly represented, right? And just an nth level of detail of music nerdery, and that type of stuff gets highlighted and really shows the engagement our community has with the data that we're pushing forth. So quality is rather important to us, and sometimes we worry very much about like not being able to know where the data problems are. But and as you know, on the internet, somebody tells you that something is wrong, they'll if you say something wrong on the internet, they'll come and correct you. The same thing is with true for data.
Yeah, and he's pointing this out in the chat that Wikidata also has academia looking at it, and that's, I guess, that one of the fantastic things about an open data set is you can just download it, look at it, take it apart, look at the quality yourself, which you couldn't do with CDDB